Hello and welcome to our video series on the existence of God, where we explore questions and topics related to God's existence and also analyze arguments for and against the existence of God. As always, I would like to begin this episode with an interesting question. If God created the universe, who created God? Now, this is a question that many atheists have asked Christians whenever Christians try to argue for God as the creator of the universe. I would like to approach this question in two ways, philosophically and theologically. I will begin with the philosophical perspective first. The central issue, according to the atheist, is this. If the universe requires a cause, namely God, why wouldn't God also require a cause? And if something like God doesn't need a cause, then perhaps the universe itself doesn't either. Now, first and foremost, I would like to point out a minor misunderstanding here. Christian thinkers don't argue that everything needs a cause, only that anything that begins to exist must have a cause. Now, this leads to a distinction between contingent and necessary realities. Let me define the terms before I move ahead. A contingent reality is something that begins to exist, depends on something else, and cannot explain itself. It could either exist or not exist. A necessary reality, on the other hand, has no beginning, is independent, and contains the reason for its own existence. It cannot not exist. It must exist. So how does this distinction help in answering the question about God and causality? Now consider the universe for a second. As previously discussed in episode 2 of this video series, there are powerful philosophical reasons and scientific evidences to suggest that the universe is contingent and had a beginning about a finite time in the past. The universe, therefore, appears to be an effect and thus is seemingly dependent upon something outside of and beyond itself, namely a transcendent causal agent. Remember, a contingent reality by definition cannot bring itself into existence. But since the universe came into existence, then some other reality must have caused it or created it from non-existence. Also, if you think about it, a contingent reality cannot be explained by appealing to another contingent reality. For example, it is not coherent to argue that the universe was created by God, but God was in turn created by God to the second power, who was in turn created by God to the third power, and so on. As the famous Aristotle rightly argued, there must be a reality that causes but is itself uncaused. Why? Because if there is an infinite regression of causes, then by definition, the whole process could never begin, and nothing is explained. In summary then, the universe appears to be a contingent entity and therefore cannot stand on its own without a causal explanation. The contingent universe requires a necessary reality, that is, an externally existent creator that by definition needs no causal explanation. Let's now take a look at the theological perspective. From a biblical standpoint, God is described as self-existent, what theologians call aseity. This means God is completely independent and does not rely on anything else for its existence. Unlike created beings whose existence depends on external factors, God's existence is grounded within Himself. Scripture reveals God's attribute of self-existence or aseity in several passages. Let me just mention a few. Isaiah 40:13 and 14, John 5:26, and Romans 11:34 and 35. The Apostle Paul proclaimed in his speech before the Greek philosophers, and I quote, And God is not served by human hands as if He needed anything, because He Himself gives all men life and breath and everything else." End quote. Acts 17:25. In conclusion then, while the universe is a contingent reality that requires a cause, God is a necessary, self-existent being who requires no cause. The question, who created God, misunderstands the concept of a necessary being. By definition, such a being is uncreated and must exist to explain the existence of everything else. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, enjoy content such as this, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and share it around. See you in the next episode. God bless you.